A 34-year-old man just became prime minister of one of the richest countries on earth in natural resources, and he had about 7 months left to live. His name was Patrice Lumumba. On Congo's Independence Day, standing right next to the Belgian king who just handed over control, he gave a speech that didn't thank Belgium for colonization. It condemned it, openly, in front of the cameras, in front of the king himself. And this wasn't a poor, resource-empty country he was taking charge of. Congo's mines had supplied the uranium for the Manhattan Project. It sat on some of the richest copper and cobalt deposits on the planet. Whoever controlled Congo controlled leverage that mattered to every major power in the Cold War. Which is exactly why, within months, the CIA had a plan to kill him. That's not speculation. It's confirmed by a US Senate investigation in the 1970s. The plan involved poison, prepared and shipped to the Congo station specifically for this purpose. That exact plot was never carried out. But Lumumba was killed anyway by Belgian-backed Katangan forces with Belgian officers present after being handed over by his Congolese political rivals. Power passed in stages to a young army colonel named Joseph Désiré Mobutu, who would go on to rule Congo, renamed Zaire, for the next 32 years as one of the most infamous kleptocrats of the 20th century. So here's the question: what if that handoff never happens? What if Lumumba survives? We're talking about a hinge point that could have changed the entire Cold War map of Africa, and one that some historians believe reaches all the way forward into how the Rwandan genocide's aftermath and the Congo Wars, the deadliest conflict since World War II, actually unfolded decades later. Stick around, because this is one of the most consequential what-ifs of the entire century, and almost nobody outside academic history circles covers it. Let's fix that. To understand the hinge point, you need the sequence because it happened fast. Within 2 weeks of independence, the Congolese army mutinied over pay and conditions. Belgium used the chaos as a pretext to send troops back in, the same troops Congo had just celebrated becoming independent from. And Moise Tshombe, backed heavily by Belgian mining interests who wanted to keep Katanga's copper wealth away from a nationalist central government, declared Katanga province independent from Congo entirely. Lumumba asked the United Nations for help putting down the secession. When the UN response felt too slow and too limited for his liking, he turned to the Soviet Union for support instead. A decision that, fairly or not, confirmed Washington's worst fears about where Congo was heading. In September 1960, President Kasavubu and Colonel Mobutu moved against Lumumba, placing him under house arrest. In January 1961, he was flown to Katanga, directly into the hands of Tshombe's forces and the Belgian officers advising them. He was killed within hours, and his body was later dissolved in acid to prevent any burial site becoming a symbol. It's hard to overstate how deliberate that final detail was. It wasn't just an assassination, it was an attempt to erase him entirely. So the hinge point is precise. It's that flight to Katanga. In our alternate timeline, let's say international pressure, a UN intervention, or simply a different decision by Kasavubu keeps Lumumba in Leopoldville instead, under arrest, politically weakened, but alive. Lumumba surviving doesn't mean Lumumba immediately returns to full power. That's worth being upfront about. He's weakened, imprisoned, and his rivals are entrenched. But here's what actually happened in the real timeline. Even after his death, his loyalists, led by Antoine Gizenga, set up a rival government in Stanleyville and held real territory and real legitimacy for months. In our alternate timeline, with Lumumba himself alive as a rallying figure instead of a martyr, that loyalist government has something the real one never had. Its actual leader, able to negotiate, broadcast, and rebuild support directly, rather than being invoked as a symbol after death. The UN's actual mission in Congo, ONUC, was already moving toward ending the Katangasecession by force in 1961 and 1962 in the real timeline. With Lumumba alive and able to actively negotiate a reconciliation, with Kasavubu, even a tense, uneasy one, that UN effort has a legitimate, unified central government to hand a reunified country back to. So the realistic path isn't an instant return to unquestioned power. It's a rocky, negotiated re-entry into government over 1961 and 1962, likely as part of a coalition, not as an untouchable strongman, but crucially, alive, in the country, and shaping its direction instead of being a rallying cry from beyond the grave. Lumumba was closely aligned ideologically and personally with Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. Both were leading voices in the Pan-African movement, pushing for a genuinely unified, self-directed continent, not just a collection of newly independent states, still economically tied to their former colonizers. A surviving Lumumba government, controlling Congo's copper, cobalt, and diamond wealth directly rather than losing it to decades of Mobutu-era looting and foreign-favored extraction deals, becomes a serious economic anchor for exactly the kind of Pan-African cooperation this channel covered in our Adwa video. A Congo with real capital to invest in continental infrastructure and institutions, not a hollowed-out state exporting its wealth abroad. Geopolitically, expect Congo to become one of the most heavily contested, non-aligned states of the Cold War. Both the US and USSR have enormous incentive to keep courting a government controlling this much strategic mineral wealth, rather than one side simply installing a client and locking the other out, the way the real timeline played out with Mobutu. It's hard to overstate how much damage Mobutu's actual 32-year rule did. He renamed the country Zaire, built a personal fortune estimated at billions of dollars while the country's infrastructure and public services collapsed, and ran one of the textbook examples of Cold War-era kleptocracy, tolerated by the US specifically because he was a reliably anti-communist ally. In our alternate timeline, a government actually accountable to a coalition, even an imperfect and fragile one, isn't guaranteed to avoid corruption entirely, but it starts from a fundamentally different incentive structure than a single unaccountable ruler backed by a foreign power, specifically because of his personal loyalty. Congo's mineral wealth, kept largely inside the country and reinvested rather than personally pocketed, plausibly funds decades of infrastructure and education that never happened in the real timeline. Now, I want to be really careful and precise with this part, because it's the most sensitive piece of this whole video and I don't want to overstate the connection. The Rwandan genocide of 1994 has its own distinct roots in Belgian colonial policy that hardened Hutu and Tutsi into rigid competing categories, a history that goes back to Rwanda's own colonial administration, separate from Congo entirely. A stable Congo doesn't erase that history, and this video isn't claiming it would have prevented the genocide itself. What changes is what happened after. In the real timeline, in the chaotic aftermath of the genocide, over 1 million refugees, including former Hutu militia members who had carried out the killings, poured into a Zaire that Mobutu's decades of hollowed-out governance had left with almost no functioning state authority in its eastern provinces. That power vacuum let armed groups regroup, rearm, and effectively use eastern Congo as a base, which became a direct trigger for the First and Second Congo Wars, conflicts that, combined, are estimated to have killed several million people, mostly through disease and displacement, making it the deadliest conflict anywhere in the world since World War II. A Congo that spent those 3 decades building real state capacity instead of being strip-mined by Mobutu, very plausibly has functioning governance and security control in its eastern provinces in 1994, meaning the specific chain of events that turned a refugee crisis into Africa's deadliest war might have played out very differently, even if the Rwandan genocide's tragedy itself remains part of this timeline too. I want to be straight with you about the uncertainty in this one. More than most, Lumumba's own coalition was fragile even before the coup, held together by opposition to Belgian and Katangan interests as much as by shared vision. Keeping it stable for decades is a real assumption, not a guarantee. He also faced serious, legitimate criticism, even from allies, for moving fast and making enemies quickly. Governing effectively is a different skill than winning independence. There's also no guarantee the US and Soviet Union simply back off. Congo's resource wealth makes continued external pressure, possibly even further coup attempts, extremely likely regardless of who's in charge. But even with all of that honestly on the table, a Congo that keeps its first, own, popularly elected leader alive and in the room for the decisions that shaped its future is very plausibly a fundamentally different country than the one Mobutu spent 3 decades hollowing out. Lumumba was prime minister for less than 3 months of actual governing time before the crisis that ended his life began. 3 months in one of the most resource-rich, strategically important countries on the continent. And it was enough to make him a target for 2 of the most powerful intelligence services on Earth. Maybe that's the real weight of this what if. It's not really about imagining a perfect outcome. It's about recognizing how much of Congo's next 6 decades, the kleptocracy, the wars, the instability that still shapes headlines about the region today, traces back to a single decision in January 1961 about which plane a 35-year-old prime minister was put on. If turning points like this interest you, a single covert decision quietly redirecting decades of a continent's history, I've got 2 other videos that connect directly to this one. What if Ethiopia's Adwa victory had triggered earlier Pan-African independence? And what if Iran's 1953 coup had failed? Both linked right here.